I'll call this meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Chair Porter,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson,
Here.
Commissioner Huber,
Here.
Commissioner Smith is absent tonight, Commissioner Kurth.
Here.
Our first read this afternoon is the invocation and pledge of allegiance, and it will be led by Commissioner Wilson and myself.
Lord, as we gather here this evening,
Approval of the minutes of August 13th, 2014.
I'll move to approve those minutes.
I'll second.
I wish to remind you, if anyone wishes to speak on any of these items, to please fill out one of these cards and hand it to the secretary, please. Got yours. The first item is the public hearing on Expedition Sign Sync.
thank you, Chair Porter, members of the Commission. Agenda item number 1 is a master sign program and conditional use permit to allow for site sign standards and a deviation from Title 16 to allow for a digital message board on a freestanding sign. Master sign programs are required of development with 5 or more tenants in order to maintain compatibility and consistency that further the architectural theme and aesthetics of the site. Existing developments without a master sign program, such as this proposal, may request one in order to provide a unique sign standard for the location that improves upon the basic standards provided by the municipal code. However, this proposal is primarily requested to allow for an electronic reader message board, with the overall master sign program itself being only a means to seek deviation from the development code sign regulations. Electronic reader message boards have been prohibited by municipal code since 2008 for non-civic or educational facilities, as discussed in the staff report, and the primary reasons for their prohibition include traffic safety concerns, aesthetics such as sign clutter, and uncontrollable content. The proposed sign program also includes other deviations such as setbacks and sign design that are discussed further in the staff report. In order for the Planning Commission to approve deviations from existing sign regulations, the municipal code requires that the Commission make specific findings, and the findings would include that the deviation would contribute to an overall design quality that would be superior to the quality resulting from current regulations, and that the proposed deviations are fully consistent with the purpose of the sign section and the development code itself. After review and analysis of the proposal in accordance with the municipal code, as discussed in the staff report, staff is unable to provide the findings that would adequately fulfill the requirements of the municipal code and recommends denial of the proposal. Additionally, should the condition maintain that electronic reader message boards are prohibited for this type of use, staff recommends that they also direct staff to move forward with a code amendment to exclude prohibited signs from being requested as deviations in master sign programs. Currently, staff notes, the continued allowance to request the approval of prohibited signs through a master sign program would also allow billboards, roof signs, and painted signs to be brought before the Commission if they were included as a master sign program. That concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions you might have on the item.
Any questions? Very much. Is there anyone here representing the Expedition sign?
Hello, my name is Tom Stino, architect, Stino Design Studio. I'm here as the applicant's representative on this sign that we're proposing tonight. Can we have the actual graphic back up of what this sign looks like? Let's toggle between the two signs if we can. This is that's the new proposed sign right there, and it meets the height, it meets the size, it meets the setback distance from the driveway and the property line. Can we go back to the other one right there? I just drove by that sign just now, and it's in dire need of repair, of painting, and it's the poor design when it went into it. There's this unbalance to it. It's a poor sign. So our hopes is to replace that sign with a better sign. Okay, fix the sign. So this is a great improvement on the existing sign that's there today. As far as the reader board, and that's the big issue, I think that's what the concern is. The reader board, I do a lot of work with Heritage Medical Group, and they're actually taking over probably 3/4 of that entire facility, that whole site right there. We're doing unit after unit. Every time somebody moves out, Heritage Medical takes over a space, so they will essentially own or be leasing most of that facility at some point. So I've been in there before when they're doing the senior workouts. You cannot believe how many seniors are in there doing workouts. So they explained to me what they need the sign for is for the seniors to let them know there's a scheduled event, a reminder to say, come Tuesday at 5 o'clock, we're having an aerobics class. So this is not the type of reader board that you've driven down Hesperia Road or in Las Vegas where you've seen these things flashing out at you. This is more of a public service type of announcement that we can't have somebody come up there on a daily basis and put a different sign up. That's the reason for this type of sign right now. It's not a fast-moving sign. The text goes up and it stays up. And then when the next event or public service comes along that they want to change it to, they would put that up. This is not a flashing sign. This is a low illumination LED sign. This is nothing like that dental design that you see down the street that jumps out at you. This is not that. Okay, this is not that. It's not that. I saw the example here in the staff report, the pig eating the sandwich. This is not that. There's no movement on any of these graphics at all. This is purely a public service announcements, and this is purely for scheduling of events that they currently have going on and new events they have going on. So if you would want to make, if you make the findings to allow this type of sign, if you want to put a restriction on how often the text can be changed, because it really is just a reader board. This is not what you picture a flashing neon sign. There's none of that. It's one color background on this thing. So that's really what I want to say about this. The sign design is a great improvement on what's currently there right now. The first one that's there is in great disrepair. I know, I just drove by this thing, and it's peeling, and it's just poorly built. So I hope you can make the findings to accept a sign like this. As far as the overall statement of the sign, it still says the Heritage Medical Group, and that's really what we're after here. It's a reader board with the time and temperature and a small reader board below it. But it meets all of the intent, distance from property line, size of sign, height of sign, so we're not asking for anything special when it comes to that. This is truly a public service type of announcement board. Do you have any questions for me?
Would it be, well, I do have a question to staff. Would it be possible to put some type of...
Sure, I guess we could, but I don't know how we would regulate it. It would be very difficult to regulate, and I'm not exactly sure what he's saying, that classes are at 5 p.m. Thursday. That's going to be the message that's going to be up all day, and then the next day it'll be classes are at 6 p.m. I'm not even sure what he's trying to say in terms of what the message is for the seniors. But I would recommend that we stay away from it. It seems like it's going to open a can of worms and allow, I don't know how we're going to prevent it from other. We may as well make the code amendment to allow them again instead of, because it's difficult to try and regulate content of the signage.
It's a very small reader board. and it truly is not a flashing type of sign that you see down the street that has the dental design, the dental group. It's not that type of board. It truly is for scheduling of events that we just can't send somebody up there with a stick to replace our text, because these are older people for the most part, for all the aerobics classes and all the workout classes, and they offer more classes than just that. There's cooking classes, they have craft classes, and a lot of these folks that come to these don't get emails. They don't do the email thing. So the reminders for them is very difficult. So if they're driving down the street and they can actually see that there truly is a class coming up, they can then at that point remember to come to that class. So thank you. I hope you can see it in the best interest of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steno. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this subject? And I'll declare the public hearing closed and ask for the pleasure of the commission.
I have a question for staff. Just a clarification on the. This is like an ask for a deviation master sign program. It's not really typically what we see with the city, a master sign program affecting all the tenant signs, affecting any secondary monument signs. Is it mostly just driven because we had to? If this decision was made, we had to make a major change because of the reader board. Or is there?
Not sure about the last part, but the first part was exactly right. The master sign program was only done because that's their method of asking for the reader board.
That's the method of getting to this point.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They weren't proposing that. They came in for the reader board sign. We made them do a master sign program because that's what we require of all centers in order to request the deviation.
Well, I'll move to deny case number PLN 14-00017.
Option resolution.
Adoption of the resolution P-14-053 denial project.
I'll second. I didn't get to, I wanted to say something else after the fact. Can I make a comment to the audience based on my decision? Okay. I just wanted to say that I didn't say it before we jumped to the motion, but the reason I second it is my feelings are that the reader boards, we've had a lot of applications in the past, and if you start allowing for certain reasons, I do believe that it will take off throughout the city. We'll get a lot of applications, and I understand what you're saying, Tom, with the seniors and heritage. However, I do think there's a lot of businesses that have seniors. I want to get the message out, and I think we're just opening up a can. That was my reasoning. I just wanted to let the audience know that.
You could reopen it.
I'll reopen the public hearing. And
If the whole issue here is the reader board, and this is truly a sign replacement issue at that point, can the sign be built without the reader board?
Yes, although we would ask the commission to allow a deviation because there is a setback issue with regard to the location of the parking, I believe. Parking stall overhang. So
I can see I'm 30 inches away from that right there, and that's what it was required, is that 30 inches. and I'm 3 feet back from my property line.
Staff would support the sign as proposed without the reader board, with a deviation for any required setbacks.
I wouldn't mind seeing an upgraded sign, maybe
Completely
a little
agree.
more than that, and so Heritage can have a bigger, prominent presence, so the
This
folks
is,
know
this is
where
the
it's at.
maximum they allow in signage. We're
No,
there.
I mean upgraded in architecture. For it. I don't think that enhances the center as compared to what's already there.
The center that's there is it's a real contemporary, clean line center. So anything more to that, it's just clutter at that point. So that's why the design is as it is. It matches the architecture of the center. There's no reason to add more to it at that point. There's no base necessary to it. Any base I would add to it would actually encroach further into the parking and or the setback. And we're right on the money. And we need that much of a base for the structure. There's 2 poles inside that.
I understand, and I'm just saying I think a little bit more could be done. I don't know what it is. I'm not a designer or an architect, but I would be in favor of taking a look at what you just proposed, and I would leave the some of that up to staff when you worked with them on.
Well, actually, our proposal is that right there. You know, so
We agree with Mr. Kurth that there could be possibly something that could be done, make it more architecturally compatible with the building. I think Alex pointed out materials on the building could be possibly used on the sign. There are existing materials. At least
It's a
look
white
at it with
concrete
staff.
tilt-up building.
I would agree. I would recommend what Mr. Kurth is proposing, that we sit down.
Can we look at the original sign again? Can you bring that original sign back up?
We completely agree that it's ugly, it needs help, and it's off balance, and it's hanging over the right-of-way possibly. Completely agree. It needs to be replaced.
We're just trying to do a proper sign replacement that cleans up everything and keeps it very simple without doing a whole lot of embellishment. The center is a concrete tilt that's painted white, very contemporary in design. Our design is that. You know, there's no additional embellishment really necessary for it. So that's our design on this. So without the reader board, it truly is just a sign replacement, is it not?
Alex, if you would, can you come up and explain what deviations would be needed for that sign that's proposed without the reader board?
It would need a deviation because although the base is 3 foot 6 inches away from the property line, the overhang of the sign exceeds 6 inches. Our code requires 3 feet from property lines and 3 feet from any abutting stall. Additionally, sign design, our code requires a base element of any sign, and it also requires to be architecturally integrated with the building itself. There is standing seam metal roofs on parts of that center that could be incorporated in the sign that we've done that's just one suggestion to incorporate architectural elements of the building. He's correct, it is a typical concrete tilt-up, but there are awnings and eaves that have standing seam metal roofs and other elements that could be incorporated. And additionally, our code does require the base element. So we need a deviation in setbacks from parking stalls and property line. And if it was moved to be approved as it is, it would also need a deviation in sign design, as well as integration with the existing site. But as Chris noted, we would recommend that at this point we just would move forward with the deviation for setbacks. As conditioned in the approval version, it is an approval for the entire sign program itself. However, if we modify conditions 1 and 4, it can be it can still approve the whole sign program for the center, so we do get some standards out of it. We can modify condition 1 and 4 to remove any mention of the message boards, and also require working with staff to bring a little more into compliance with the architectural requirements of the code.
Mr. Stino, would you be willing to meet with staff and to work that out?
I truly feel our design stands on the sign. If we do any kind of standing seam roof on this thing, or try to match any kind of standing seam roof, we would now exceed the height of the existing sign. So it would have to lower the sign at that point. So, and then a base then would just encroach further more into the parking space and or the front yard setback, which we're right on the money there. So I look at my sign and I wonder, is this all necessary to do this? You know, they spent an incredible amount of time as it is. I look at the staff report and I ask myself, is this really necessary for a sign replacement? You know, even without a reader board, is all of this necessary? We're fixing a problem that we have currently. So I would like to keep the design as it sits. We've
Well, you just heard our vote, that we voted to deny this particular one. If you're not willing to go and see the staff about what you can do to modify it so it will meet our standards, then we can't do anything further for you.
And my intent's not to have anyone jump through more hoops or spend a whole lot of money to make some amazing Hesperia Road sign, but just because of the fact that you say the building's bland and boring, I don't think the sign deserves to be that. I think there could be a little bit more in that. I would suggest working with staff a little bit more to see if there's a happy
So at
medium.
this point, then, you cannot retract your vote on the reader board issue and approve this sign as it sits with these other items. Is that correct?
Technically, they could do a motion for reconsideration if somebody voting in favor for it wanted to make that motion. However, that should be made at this meeting if you wanted to do that. But I'm hearing there's not a consensus yet in terms of what it is that the applicant's looking for, other than a recommendation to work with staff and bring back something that looks a little different at another meeting.
Well, he could appeal the decision,
Absolutely.
our decision to the city council.
Absolutely.
Within 10 days, you could appeal our decision. So you have that recourse, okay?
You know, I would probably need to confer with my client on this to see which way they would want to take this. But, okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. This public hearing is closed again. Is there anything further on that that anybody wants to add? Agenda item number 2. And Commissioner Kurth.
Yeah, this item, even though it looks like it's going to be projected to be continued, there was a pending suit negotiations going on where I did notice my name was mentioned in there, so I thought I'd better err on the side of caution just for a perceived possible conflict. I will recuse from agenda item number 2.
Therefore, I will move that agenda item number 2, an appeal of the zoning administrator's decision to prohibit the establishment of an auto title loan business on property located at 14213 7th Street, Suites D and E, be continued to 10/8/14.
Second.
It didn't, okay. That item has been continued. Agenda item number 3 is another continuance request, and it's the various amendments to Title 16 of the Victorville Municipal Code. Therefore, I will move to continue this item to October the 8th, 2014.
Second.
That item has been continued. Agenda item number 4.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Item number 4 is PLN 14-19. It's an appeal of the zoning administrator's decision to deny the request for a business license to operate a restaurant and bar located at 14562 7th Street. Stacy Wendler is the applicant. If you recall at the last meeting, it was a little bit awkward with the extra materials that were delivered before the meeting and the Commission's inability to review them. And then there was also some testimony taken and given between the applicant's attorney and our deputy, that the meeting ended up with a direction from the Commission to continue the item and to look at the opportunity to condition the business license with the applicant's attorney. We have done that. Now that discussion has been occurring throughout that time since the continuance. It has not changed the Sheriff's Department recommendation for denial, and therefore does not change the zoning administrator decision or recommendation for denial. However, the ability to condition the restaurant bar in a fashion that makes it more similar to existing restaurants and restaurants with accessory bars in the city seems like an acceptable thing to do, and therefore up to the commission's determination.
Questions?
If I might, I just want to add that we have been working with the applicant's attorney, and we have been fine-tuning conditions. I believe there are 12 conditions that the applicants have been willing to agree to or abide by. Again, there is a little bit of fine-tuning, and assuming that you want to direct zoning administrator to go ahead and issue the business license, there's still some logistical issues about how to do that, so I'd recommend that he be given a little bit of latitude in terms of putting these, assuming you want to go this direction, into a document as part of the business license. Again, the one issue that we haven't got complete consensus in to date has been hours of operation with respect to these proposed conditions. Everything else seems pretty workable, and I believe, at least from my perspective and from a staff perspective, we've been willing to sort of fine-tune them down to what we believe are and would be acceptable conditions, assuming, again, that the Planning Commission wants to proceed down this path.
Very much. And I will declare this public hearing open, and I have Mr. Ralph Salzman to speak to this issue. Do you have anything new to add? We got the conditions.
Yes,
And-
thank you. Well, to the chair and to the commission and to staff, when last we were here as council and as Mr. Borchardt has indicated, we were given the task of seeing if we could arrive at conditions that were acceptable to the city and also to my client. And I said that I was confident at the time that we could, and I believe we have. The one remaining issue is we would like to have a little bit more time open. There has been correspondence, many conversations, and a lot of very good and hard work undertaken by city staff and through the city attorney's office. And other than that 30-minute time period during the week, we have arrived at an agreement as to all of the other conditions. And what we would like to see is this commission approving the use, that is the business license for this use, with the hours of operation as indicated in our last correspondence. What we're trying to do is to be consistent with the other family restaurants in the immediate area. There are actually other restaurants outside the immediate area that are staying open even later than what we're requesting, but we're trying to be consistent with the restaurants within the immediate area. And also, there's another consideration, and that is this. Rather than have customers leave at the same time that the cessation of alcohol is required, we would like that half-hour buffer so that we would have no further sales, service, or consumption after 11 o'clock, which is the moment that city staff has suggested would be appropriate, but then have the restaurant stay open another 30 minutes rather than have alcohol stop and then people leave at the same time. My client's promised me, and she can indicate to this commission, that for that last 30 minutes, at least for that last 30 minutes, coffee's free, and people can not have alcohol on the table, not have a beer in their hand for those last 30 minutes. And I think it would be helpful and a good gesture to the city, and helpful to my client as well. So I think that's where we are, and I wish to express my client's appreciation to the city attorney's office and to staff for working so diligently toward the end that we have arrived at. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question, just so we're all clear and so the commission is clear. What are now the hours being proposed?
Thank you for asking. The hours that we're suggesting and the wording of the condition, this would be condition 1, would be as follows. The hours of operation shall be limited to 11 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. Friday and Saturday, and on Sunday 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sales, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages shall cease 30 minutes before closing on each night. When a national holiday is celebrated on a Monday, then Sunday closure shall be at 11:30 p.m. with sales, service, and consumption stopping at 11 p.m. So that's the exact wording of the of our proposal.
Further questions?
Yes, I don't understand that. 12:30 is Saturday, just Saturday night or Friday and Saturday?
Friday and Saturday.
So you'd close at 12, basically, and you wouldn't sell no more alcohol after 12.
Exactly. Sales, service, and consumption. That means no alcohol on the table, no alcohol in anybody's hand, no alcohol. No beer, no wine. Gone.
If you sell a beer at 11:59, how do they consume it after, without consuming it?
I'm sorry, say that again?
If you sell a beer right before or 11:30, right before or 10:59, and they're not allowed to consume it after 11.
That's a legitimate question. And that's a question that every restaurateur in California has to ask themselves, regardless of when they actually close. Are they doing a good business if they sell 1 minute before they close, whether it's 11 or 12 or 2 o'clock in the morning? And the answer is no, you should not be selling alcohol that nobody can consume. And I promise you that my client will not be doing that. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thanks.
I will declare the public hearing closed and ask for them.
So is it clear, is it my understanding that the conditions with different colors that we receive from the applicant today are different than the conditions that are in our staff report, the latest that we got, correct?
Once you got off the internet, I think they're the
Yeah.
same.
The colored ones are probably very slightly different. And maybe we should just go through them if you want to make sure we're all on the same page.
You mentioned that we should offer some flexibility to fine
Right.
tune, but I'm still not clear how many would be fine tuned. I'm okay with staff doing that, but
Again, we're looking for direction from the commission with respect to the hours, assuming you have their proposal, staff's proposal was a little bit different. As to the CUP, they are indicating a willingness that there will be no live entertainment, but they want the option of being able to apply for a CUP. I believe this is one issue that I haven't brought up with them, that having live entertainment would also require under your code a separate business license.
Correct.
So we may need to modify the language that if you go after the CUP, it also then, their intent is that they would not be precluded from proceeding under that option of going to apply for the CUP and or the business license if they wanted to do that at some time in the future.
Could I ask you one question? It says, an application for such CUP may be made and granted. So, and may be granted.
But yeah, you would have the discretion whether to grant it or not based on the application. But it would also then require consideration of another business license because per your code, entertainment requires a separate business license from a restaurant use. Item number 3, this was the issue with respect to the stage, and they have agreed that it will be used exclusively for additional dining areas, unless, again, otherwise approved through a CUP. The advertising issue, the intent here is to prevent off-site advertising except for champagne brunches. And with respect to the other items, I think we're all in agreement with items 5 through 12.
I'm comfortable with that. Seems very administrative stuff that needs to be tweaked a little. I'm comfortable moving forward.
Want to make the motion?
I think the motion would be to adopt Resolution P14051 as modified with the understanding that the business license can be granted with the conditions as set forth in the agenda, and again, giving some latitude to the zoning administrator to just modify them very slightly, not in terms of substance, but in order to make the whole thing work properly.
Yes, that is my motion. Did that well. That was perfect.
You have to hit your button.
Okay.
The one question I do have is the hours. Are you in agreement with their proposal on the hours?
I am.
Yes.
See a big button.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Congratulations, Mr. Salzman. We have approved that with those conditions, those 12 conditions.
Oh, yeah.
Public comments on planning matters. In compliance with the Brown Act, it is necessary for the Planning Commission to make available time for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on items of interest that fall within the Planning Commission's subject matter jurisdiction. Please limit the length of your comments to 3 minutes, and please fill out one of the forms, the white cards that we have. Does anyone wish to speak under public comments? The next item is new business, item number 5. Is our workshop.
Yes, Madam Chair. As the Commission knows, the City Council held the strategic planning session in January and came up with some goals for the city on how the city should go in the future, what direction we should take. And 3 of those had to do with development, and those were higher value residential, prettier community, and a safer community. And although the lot size issue has been the main topic of focus and discussion, along with design guidelines and other changes, these issues relate to safety of the community and higher value residential as well, we believe. Because if we're trying to bring the properties up, bring the housing stock up, bring the housing values and the neighborhoods, the values up, and expect a higher value resident to move into them, to buy them and live there, then we need to start looking at what the city looks like everywhere. And part of what happens when somebody drives through the city is the image that they get of the city and decide whether they want to live here or not, and whether they want to move here and spend their money on a house in Victorville. So some of the issues that we have, that we've given you the information on, and hopefully you had a chance to read through some of it and drive around, like I said, and it's not just driving around Victorville, maybe it's driving around other cities as well, but just to try and get an idea of what impact these businesses have and what concerns they bring. And so the intent of this item was to start some discussion on what is the openness, what is your feelings, what are your thoughts on some of these uses. Are you open to prohibiting them? Are you open to looking at them in different zone districts possibly? Or how do we want to tackle this? Do you want to, maybe we break it up into pieces and we take a couple of them different topics and we move to a different, another specific workshop session in a couple weeks? That's an option for sure. But however you want to deal with it. We sent you a lot of information, the majority of it all negative about these types of uses, and hopefully on some of it you weren't offended. I know a lot of the information on massage it's offensive, and so some of the crimes that you see happening because of these businesses in other cities, not necessarily Victorville yet, but I think there were articles from Adelanto and Hesperia for some of them, but it will hit home eventually. And if we keep developing, remember, as Scott was pointing out with all the lot issues, we have the ability to put more houses in the rest of the remaining developable area of the city than are in the city right now. So the city can double in size at least. And if we do that and we continue the same land use patterns and the same land uses going into our commercial centers, we're going to get the same or worse product throughout the years and throughout the future, the next 20, 30 years as we develop. So that's kind of what we want, what the idea was, and so I can turn it over to you, or if you have any questions, if you have any...
A number of questions.
Sure.
Currently, do we require a conditional use permit for each one of these businesses? Don't we?
Pretty much. Yes, we have prohibitions right now on the money service businesses. Would be check cashing, payday loans. If you remember, in 2005, the commission established a policy of that those aren't banking and financial institutions, which is what the land use is listed in our land use table. So we've been prohibiting those, attempting to, except for accessory. A couple have slipped through the cracks along the way, and we're dealing with that, hence the Title Max continuance. But those have been considered prohibited. Pawn shops, I don't know whether those are conditional or...
As a secondary, as used goods, they're considered prohibited in most zones except for Old Town.
Yeah, Old Town specific plan has them as a use.
We didn't include adult bookstores with this.
We can't. Those already have regulations in a different section of the code for sexually oriented or adult-oriented businesses, which we cannot. We already have regulations on those. They have distance requirements and separation. Can't be near uses.
One of the things that we, and I don't know whether we still require it or not, but we used to require fingerprinting for owners and employees of such businesses, like taxi cab drivers. And there was a number of things where we required fingerprinting at the sheriff's department.
Yes, those are still requirements of different types of business licenses. Yes.
Because that tells you a lot right there.
Yes. That used to be part of the massage requirements as well, that the technicians used to have to go down and do that. And one of the things that we were kind of happy to see when the state took it over was taking that away, not requiring the police to waste their time doing that kind of things. So when the state licensed them, we thought that's great. But then you're right, that just brought up more issues. They're not doing a very good job of licensing them. Although they have gotten better in terms of checking into the schools that issue the certificates for massage and things like that. They have not accepted. Now they have a list of schools that they don't accept as being licensed, and giving out licenses and things. But
Madam Chair, if I might add, since we touched on massage parlors, I mentioned this previously at the meeting at 4:45, but there is currently on the governor's desk Assembly Bill 1147, which substantially addresses the existing laws regulating massage therapy professionals. They have what's called the California Massage Therapy Council. They are streamlining that process and creating far more regulation in connection with that process. That bill was passed 68-1 by the Assembly and 34-0 by the Senate. So it has a strong likelihood, I think, of getting the governor's signature. It basically also then does return to cities the ability to at least from a land use standpoint, regulate massage parlors, which you have not been able to do in the past based on the past state legislation. So again, if this becomes effective January 1, it will probably address a lot of these issues, and whatever you decide to do in terms of directing staff, we're going to have to probably make it consistent with this legislation. The same is true actually with respect to the internet cafes where they have sweepstakes types operations. There is a bill currently also on the governor's desk, AB 1439, that is basically indicating that sweepstakes being run, essentially similar to gambling, will be prohibited in the state of California. So again, that will probably influence your regulation or your ability to regulate those uses. And as Chris mentioned, on the cash checking, the city's currently got a moratorium in place for 6 months on all of the check cashing type uses, basically in response to the Title Max issue. And so staff is now working on that issue as well before that moratorium expires to see what you want to do. So it's going to be a perfect time to discuss specifically that issue as well.
Yes, and we definitely want that to be part of the discussion as well. We would like to talk about the gold exchange businesses in the same fashion as money services, because it has the same issues. It offers thieves an easy way of bringing stolen jewelry in and getting cash for it. It's very quick. There's no, not much identification needed to show that you know what method of showing that you own that jewelry or anything like that. So and they deal in cash, so they're open to robberies as well. So as you saw in the articles, those are a lot of the concerns with those type of facilities uses.
I have one other comment on what I saw in this information. What about thrift shops that put their stuff out on the sidewalk? We have some of that is, it's not necessarily it is a thrift shop.
Yes, we do only allow sale of used goods in C1 neighborhood commercial. It is difficult. We do have some existing stores. They do have some outdoor display allowed. It is hard to monitor when they just push it out on the sidewalk, and more of a code enforcement.
But we're also looking at city beautification and things
Sure.
like that, so it seems to me like that's, and it's really not necessary, because you're not going to just see what you want there on the sidewalk. Actually, it's the weather's going to get to it anyway, so.
I would also like to see a discussion on hydroponic stores.
Perhaps we should, on the internet cafes and massage professionals, maybe we should wait until the ruling comes down from the state of California.
Oh, sure. No, this is kind of just to get your general feedback on, do you agree that these are issues? Do you agree that we should take a harder look at these? The city and staff have been so pro-business and pro, property rights over the past that you come in and we look at our code, and if it's allowed, you're in, and we'll get you in as fast as we can. That's been our method. And now I think we're taking a step back and looking at it and saying, wait a minute, there's some things that probably aren't the best for the city, and that's kind of what we're doing here. And if you agree, you agree that massage is an issue that we need to address, like Andre said, when the law comes out, we'll put the strictest requirements on it that we possibly can. We'll come back to you with those. Same with internet cafes. If we can't prohibit them. And part of the discussion, too, was if we can prohibit them, we're talking about actually putting a section in the code of prohibited, so that it's not a question, it's not a determination on whether is this meet the finding, is this allowable or not. It'll just be, that's what we're talking about, is putting it actually prohibited, so there's no misunderstanding.
But sometimes a massage parlor is also associated with maybe even a doctor, or and it's pretty well regulated. So we would have to distinguish between that, and if it's offered with other services, like in a
salon,
beauty parlor.
Yes, exactly.
But it couldn't be shouldn't be just that thing.
Agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm certainly pro-business. However, I do think these outlined uses do, I think it'd benefit the city to look a little bit deeper on this and find out what we should do. I don't have any recommendations or thoughts at this time, but I do know we should look at it.
I have the same feeling. It seems like a lot of other cities are having problems with all these things, and the safer we can keep our community, the better off we are. I have no problem with farther and doing the right thing.
Great, good.
Does the sheriff's department say anything about like the gold exchange businesses and stuff like that on or lending services? You know, that
Basically, that they can be fronts for money extortion, for what did he call it? Money laundering, and illegal stolen goods. Selling that type of merchandise in those businesses. Hard to track. And I did run into Fernando Pena. I don't know if he mentioned that he was here for the money service issue. I don't know if he had any comment or if he wanted to speak, but. Oh, okay. That's what he's doing. Okay, well, that's good to hear. Like I said, we'll move forward then on what we can, on the ones we can, and we'll keep track of the ones that have legislation coming on them and bring forward either more discussion.
Hey, Chris, I didn't read every single article in here. I'd like to tell you I did. And by the way, thanks for you guys and your team. This is a lot of research, putting all this together. I did not read word for word every article, but I got the gist on each one of these different items. And would it be helpful to the commission if we did end up having more of a workshop or discussing more in detail on each of these? Since a lot of it seems to have to do with the crime element, would we be able to get a report from the Sheriff's Department since I saw there was a map in here with each of these items outlined on the map where they're located, could we get maybe a calls for service or just a general feel of crime with what we have existing with these uses in the city? And then we can maybe extrapolate in our own minds versus other parts of the city.
that's a good suggestion. A very good suggestion.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission. Fernando Pena with the California Financial Service Providers. We're a trade association representing check cashers and payday lenders here in California. We're happy to assist staff and the Commission moving forward to provide you with any information that would help you, learn more about the payday lending industry and check cashing in particular. We have several members that are based here in the city of Victorville, and they've been longstanding businesses. They have not grown their business. I can give you an example. USA Cash Checks has been here, has 3 stores, and has not grown, and has abided by the laws here in the city, and is very willing to welcome you into a store so we can provide you with some information, give you a tour, talk about our operations. As far as the payday lending industry goes, we are regulated by the state of California through the Department of Business Oversight and operate under the Deferred Deposit Transaction Law that was created by the state legislature nearly 20 years ago. As far as the pawn industry goes, I know we mentioned some things about the gold buying industry. There are some disadvantages that pawn shops have with respect to gold buying industries. The pawn industry does have to electronically report their transactions to law enforcement, where many of these fly-by-night gold buyer businesses do not. I also represent Cash America Pawn. We don't have any businesses here in your city, but we do abide by about 13 federal statutes, including anti-laundering, USA Patriot Act, and Bliley-Gramm-Leach laws as well. So there is a lot of misconceptions about the pawn industry as well as the payday lending industry, and we'd love to provide you with some additional information to help you learn more about the industries and also provide the council with some good information about our businesses. Thank you.
Any other comments? on agenda item number 6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fellow commissioners, at your last August meeting, you were presented with an alcohol code amendment that you recommended to City Council. Our City Attorney's Office has made some minor clarifying changes. We're bringing this back before you just to get your review and report on that. Mainly the changes are all minor. There is one main change that wanted to point out on the definition of restaurant. The city attorney requested that we add a qualifier to what incidental is for alcohol sales within a restaurant. So as you can see on page 3 of that handout, the qualifier would be 25% of the gross sales of a restaurant could be for alcohol. Mainly just to strengthen the ordinance were the changes.
So what is your pleasure?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend that the City Council approve of the modified alcohol code amendment in the draft proposal ordinance 2324.
I'll second.
The next item is, is a presentation of reports by commission members. I have a couple of items. And I mean, it isn't anything that we need to do immediately, but because I know you guys have been very busy. But when we're talking about specific plans and other special subdivisions, there are set aside certain lots for public use, i.e. parks, fire stations, etc. And it's my understanding that if they don't build those, and if the city does not want to build there, that it just goes back to the developer. I think that there's something wrong with that, because the reason why we're allowing the smaller lots and in special circumstances was because of the amenities. And so if they don't build a park and we say that we don't want it, I would think that they would dedicate that or deed that parcel to us, and then we could use that for parks that would be within that neighborhood. I think it's a good thing for us to discuss.
We completely agree.
Oh, good.
It's been written into some specific plans where they did exactly what you're talking about. If it wasn't needed by the school district, then they built houses on it, and they got the benefit of the specific plan like you're talking about. But then the school district decided not to use the land, so no, we completely agree.
The other thing that I want, and I think that that's good for a good discussion with us, because I think that there's ways that we could do it without burdening them so much. But even if we sold the lot, so that we could apply it towards our park or whatever they said that they were going to put there.
Yeah, we agree that they probably need some more burdening.
Oh, okay, thank you. The next thing was there's a whole lot of grocery carts on Hesperia Road right across from that
Our
recycling
grocery
place.
cart expert just left, too. Alex has been working hard.
I've never gone down Hesperia Road without seeing grocery carts spread out.
It's funny that you say that. He has just begun. I don't know if you remember. New ordinance went through council. He has worked with the every retailer who has carts who would need to. He has sent out letters. He is getting them. They started inspections last week, as a matter of fact, to make sure they have the proper signage on them, that if the cart is taken, which was needed, so when we go pick up the carts, that we can start, if they're an issue, we can start charging them for that. But retailers are responding well. A lot have installed the signage. Rite Aid, I believe he said, has installed the poles to keep them from going out of the store into the parking lot. So there is action happening. There should be less carts visible in the streets and ditches around the city. But I don't know whether he's gotten to Hesperia Road yet or not. I'll have to ask him.
I see him every time. Then I wanted to bring up this really nice article about somebody we know and love on Scott Webb. It was in the link, and it was very nice. I'm glad they honored you.
Thank you.
Scott failed to mention that to us. So.
Oh, here, let me. This is on down.
I blame Doug Robertson for volunteering me to too many committees. I get suckered into these things.
I went to Victor Valley College too, and I also went to SC. I like Victor Valley College better than I did SC. I really did. I had the best professors there. Anyway, is there anything else?
I want to add anything's better than SC.
Oh, are you from UCLA?
Might be a Bruin grad.
Oh, terrible. If there's nothing further to come before us, then I will adjourn this meeting.